The haunting silence of Pinecrest. I used to do a lot of urban exploring out of Seattle, and me and my crew ticked off a lot of places over the years. There are the big grain silos in Pilsen, left empty after a big explosion. Then, near Tacoma, there's an old prison with cells and chapels now open for tours. In Portland, Oregon, we saw this incredibly beautiful but decaying church. Then, under Seattle, there are old freight tunnels, mostly closed off now, that were anything but beautiful. The old Seattle post office was huge and empty for years. There's also the old Cook County Hospital, now becoming a hotel, but it was once a place straight out of Silent Hill. After a while, we started looking further to hit up places we hadn't been before. That's when we heard about a place in the middle of nowhere over in Montana called Pinecrest. Back in the 1900s, Pinecrest used to be a pretty prosperous place because of the big creamery they had in town. They used to turn out hundreds of tons of butter a week, and it employed almost everyone in town. But then, when rising costs forced the creamery to shut down, it meant just about the whole town was suddenly out of work overnight. With no jobs, people started leaving, one family at a time. By the 80s or early 90s, the place was just a total ghost town. We did some research online, mainly using urbex forums where others would post about their experiences, and drew up a list of places we wanted to visit. There was, obviously, the old creamery, which was huge and falling apart. There was also the abandoned church and cemetery, along with a handful of other places. It looked like a great place to explore. The only drawback was the 4-hour car ride. Since it was late October when we got the urge to visit, we'd have to start the journey at the crack of dawn if we wanted to hit up all of our chosen spots before it got dark. So, one day in early November, we loaded up my friend Nathan's van and drove off down Highway 64 in the direction of the Montana state line. The weather was miserable when we hit the road, a cold, gray Saturday morning that I'd much rather have just spent in bed. But honestly, urbex when the weather is nice feels kind of odd, and no filter in existence makes a place feel gloomier or creepier than a naturally overcast sky. On top of that, the prospect of hitting up a brand new place kept us so excited that we didn't mind that the heating in Nathan's van was completely broken. Besides, each of us was dressed for the Arctic, so the cold was at the back of our minds as we got closer and closer to Pinecrest. When we arrived, the town was exactly as you'd imagine, empty and silent, with buildings that looked like they'd crumble if you so much as looked at them for too long. The streets were overgrown with weeds, and apart from the sound of the wind whispering around the abandoned buildings, it was completely silent. We started at the old schoolhouse, a building that seemed to sag under the weight of its own rotting structure. Inside, the air was musty and dank, with leaks almost everywhere from the previous day's rain. How the place was still standing was beyond me. I was way more worried about it coming down on our heads, even after I saw what was written on the chalkboard. Nathan pointed it out first, directing us into a classroom that had the word "danger" written on the chalkboard in big white letters with an exclamation point. Nathan was smiling when he showed us, and it got a little chuckle out of me too. You see a lot of that kind of spooky graffiti around well-trodden urbex sites, and it's usually a little more creative than just danger. You pay attention to official-looking signs and warnings about unstable structures or active power cables and all of that. But when it comes to stuff like "Abandon Hope all you who enter here" or "Pennywise's Lair," you tend not to take it very seriously. We figured the danger on the chalkboard amounted to some other explorer's tag, an unsettling way of saying, "I got here first." These days, though, I think that graffiti was much more significant than we first imagined. We moved on to the other classrooms, checking the chalkboards for more messages, but there was nothing. I remember the desks being covered in a thick layer of dust. After wiping some of it with his glove to see just how thick it really was, Nathan started playfully chasing us around, threatening to wipe that grime on one of our jackets. That's when I first noticed something was off with our friend Lucas. Lucas was usually the most enthusiastic of us. His camera was always ready, his curiosity boundless. But that day, he seemed tired and distracted, almost like he was in some kind of daze. He barely reacted as Nathan came at him, and when he did notice what was on Nathan's finger, he didn't even find it funny. He just snapped at Nathan, not overly harshly, but we knew the joke was over. We moved on from the school to the general store. The shelves were still stocked with cans made by brands we'd never heard of. Some of their labels faded so badly that we could barely read them. Lucas stayed quiet as we walked the aisles, which again was totally not like him. By the time we got to the old town hall, his behavior had gotten even weirder. He seemed like he was muttering to himself, his eyes darting around like he was seeing things we couldn't. Then suddenly Lucas reached up and just started clutching his nose. Blood poured out, dark and thick, staining his gray gloves. He looked scared. We tried to help, but he backed up, holding out an arm like, "Get the hell off of me." His nose was bleeding so much that one of us actually asked if Lucas was good to keep going. The idea seemed to irritate him even more than his nosebleed did. He said we hadn't driven all that way to just turn around and leave over a nosebleed. In the moment, I appreciated how unselfish it sounded. None of us wanted to leave if we could avoid it. As Nathan went into his pack to get our first aid kit so Lucas could stem the blood, I wandered off alone towards the old sheriff's office to take a look around. It looked much like I had imagined it. A reception area, a back office, and a hallway leading to what must have been cells of some description. It wasn't immediately visible from the front door, but the second I turned the corner into the reception area, I saw it. In huge black letters, daubed in what must have been spray paint, were the words, "If you bleed, leave Pinecrest and never return." The sight of it sent literal shivers down my spine. I ran back to tell the others. I told them we had to leave, but again, Lucas objected. I started to explain what I'd seen written on the wall of the sheriff's office. As I did, Nathan and the others started to listen, but I only got a couple of words out before Lucas went nuts and started screaming at me. He said something like, "How many times do I have to say it? We're not leaving, all right?" Then, as he started walking towards me, still yelling, the others jumped in to hold him back, thinking he was about to punch me. We worked to calm him down. It kind of seemed like we did at first, but when I look back on it, I think that's when that weird kind of fatigue started to set in. We basically managed to drag Lucas back to the van after he stopped struggling. We were convinced he was going through some kind of medical emergency. We offered to take him to the hospital, but all he wanted to do was go home. The drive back was quiet and very tense. Lucas's nosebleed had stopped, but he was very pale, his breathing shallow. He passed out before we even hit the highway, his body limp against the seat. We tried to wake him when we got back to town, but he was unresponsive, barely stirring even when we shook him. The fact that he even showed signs of life was a huge relief. When we finally got him to his apartment, Lucas was acting like someone recovering from a deep sleep, very groggy, very confused. We just left him to rest and asked his mom and sister to keep an eye on him after telling them what had happened. But we were all very shaken by what had taken place. The image of that warning on the wall, the nosebleed, and the fear in Lucas's eyes, it all played over and over in my mind. Lying in bed that night, I couldn't shake the unease of what we'd seen. Why did Lucas react that way? What was it, either in or about Pinecrest, that made him act like that? The warning in the sheriff's office was very clear, but its implications were terrifying. Was it some kind of chemical exposure? And if so, why was it only Lucas who reacted that way? I thought about the stories I'd heard of Pinecrest, tales of that town that once thrived but fell for reasons that were never quite clear. I'd read about the creamery shutting down, but it didn't occur to me until then that none of the posts I'd read said why the creamery was shut down. Some spoke of economic downfall, but there was nothing about a mysterious illness or any other kind of unexplained events leading to its abandonment. The next day, I did some research but found nothing that could explain what had happened to Lucas. There were no records of toxic spills, no unusual occurrences officially documented. Yet the physical and psychological impact on Lucas was undeniable. We all saw it, and it scared the hell out of us. He was the only one who bled, and the only one who acted strange in a way we could see and recognize. I wrote this down not because I'm good with words, but because I need to warn others. If you ever hear about Pinecrest, if someone suggests a reason to visit, just don't. Stay the hell away from that place. Whatever is there isn't just the ghost of the past. It's something that can reach out, touch you, make you bleed, make you lose yourself. My friend has recovered, but honestly, you might pay a very high price uncovering whatever secrets that place holds.